Hello everyone and welcome to Press TV's News Review program where we get in depth in one of the day's top stories. Pakistan pays for its first import of discounted Russian crude in the Chinese yuan amid attempts worldwide to ditch the US dollar in trade. Now, the cargo carrying over 45,000 metric tons of crude oil arrived in the southern port city of Karachi on Sunday. The shipment was arranged under a deal struck between Islamabad and Moscow back in April. This is the first Russian oil cargo to the South Asian country and marks a significant shift in Pakistan's dollar-dominated payment policy. Pakistan has been reeling from a severe economic crisis, resulting in a shortage of foreign currency to pay for fuel imports. Joining us now for the program is Syed Mohsin Abbas, journalist and political commentator. They're joining us from Islamabad, and John Bosnich, journalist and activist and political analyst, joining us from Belgrade. Hello, gentlemen, and welcome to both of you to the program here. I guess we'll start there in Islamabad with you, Syed Mohsin Abbas. Hope you're safe and doing well. Syed, your initial thoughts on the story. There are a few dimensions to this story. The de-dollarization aspect, the fact that Pakistan, basically a pseudo-friend of the U.S., is not really defined because the U.S. kind of gave the green light to this and they're not opposed to the Pakistanis securing their oil supplies and securing their energy needs. So they're staying out of this for the time being. But nevertheless, there is some controversy here involved. Your initial thoughts, please.
Well, it's quite a surprising move because Imran Khan, who's essentially been ousted by the Pakistani establishment, which includes the army, was ousted partly because he made a trip to Russia to extend economic relations and even military relations, which proved highly complicated for some of the people really running the government and the establishment here. Now, for the Russians to be delivering oil, even with the establishment that is in power now, is very, very interesting. What we've got, of course, is a power struggle. Pakistan sits at a really critical geopolitical juncture, not only for the East, but also the Western nations. And of course, it's a nuclear nation. It's also a hugely wealthy nation. $25 trillion of wealth is locked away underground. Black diamonds, copper, and all sorts of minerals, even gas, huge supplies. So Pakistan is not poor in terms of resources. What seems to have been the problem is that the Americans have essentially, and the World Bank and the money mafia around the world, have essentially taken the freehold control of the nation through a handful of elites, whether they be the kind of landowners or industrialists, nouveau riche, or the army. The fact is, Pakistan has been serving as much the interests of America and the West as its own. Of course, that's been encouraged with something like, I think something like $78 billion. That's from 1948 to 2016. That's the amount that America has given to Pakistan, supposedly in aid. The bulk of that being military aid, which actually only benefits their own companies, the likes of course, the various military hardware sales folk over there based in America. So actually, all that's happened is that Pakistan is essentially being operating as a watchdog for America in this region. That's what most analysts would say. In Afghanistan, Pakistan acted as the facilitator for American policy against Russia once upon a time. It even acted as a bulwark for America during the days of the Taliban in the background, being in the opposition there. Of late, though, of course, there were huge issues, and of course, the relations between the Americans and the Pakistanis had begun to strain. And as I said, now that the Russians are actually selling oil, what's happening, of course, just prior to Imran Khan being ousted in 2021, for instance, Russia sold Mi-35 attack helicopters, and they had even signed defense contracts around anti-tank systems, defense weapons. that would have been a threat to the American military aid, if you like, the money that the Americans made out of Pakistan's kind of, defense capabilities and operations in the region. Of course, that tussle must have been going on in the background, but then that's dwarfed by the Chinese interest in building highways and a straight road and a railway link from China down to the Gwadar port in southern Pakistan. These two factors were really pulling Pakistan into the vortex of essentially the Eurasian Axis, BRICS, the Shanghai Corporation, and such things. But America, of course, wouldn't want to sit by and see that happen without putting up some kind of struggle, and that's what we're seeing in Pakistan with the prices going sky high, cost of living, inflation, the value of the rupee. All of it is disastrous at the moment for Pakistan, and the ordinary folk are suffering hugely in terms of the strain on their daily budgets. This battle between the Eurasian Axis and America actually ultimately pans out in problems for the Pakistani people, but it also now gives the Pakistani establishment a choice. Are they going to go for a multipolar world outlook in terms of their foreign policy, or are they going to stay with the unipolar aspect that they have had by being in America's pocket for, well, decades?
Interesting point there. John, welcome to the program. John, what I want to put to you is the whole de-dollarization aspect of this thing, because we know the U.S. dollar is historically used for international trade when it comes to crude oil. We know that the Russia-Ukraine war has kind of dwindled dominance of the U.S. dollar, as Russia is not able to use the dollar in Western trade. It's selling its oil to India and China and now Pakistan because it can't sell it to the Europeans. As a result, you know what they're paying for energy costs all throughout Europe. And also in the States, you remember how it went sky high for the first 8-9 months of that Ukraine war. My question to you, I see these U.S. sanctions as kind of backfiring when they are, in essence, promoting de-dollarization, something that really, when you're pushing sanctions on a country, you're trying to hurt that country, not your own, not your allies, but this is exactly what's happening, John.
Absolutely true, and I can say that the step to de-dollarize is far more important than all of the other factors that you've discussed so far in this program. If the de-dollarization can be achieved in trade with Pakistan, which has, as you have said, has been a country basically in the American military-industrial pocket, if it can be achieved there, then certainly it can be achieved elsewhere in countries which have had a more independent foreign policy and which have not been basically staging points for the US military in Afghanistan and around the region. So if a de-dollarization can be attempted here in fuel, and this is something that Pakistan absolutely has to have, then it can be extended to other factors in the Pakistani economy. And if that is done, they can quickly bring under control the economic problem of inflation as America raises prices for goods that they sell to Pakistan. This is a step one. If you get off the dollar, you're no longer an addict to American economic manipulation.
Interesting. And Sid, in its weekly briefing, the U.S. State Department spokesman Vedant Patel said each country is going to have to make its own sovereign decisions as it relates to its energy supply. He said that we maintain the countries will make their own sovereign decisions. We have never tried to keep Russian energy off the market. This is the U.S. Department saying this. How can you say this? They pushed the Europeans to do this exact thing, to sanction Russian gas and oil. They, in turn, sanctioned initially Russian gas and oil. But then they won't ask the Pakistanis to do that, which is really strange for me, that you're going to put that pressure on your allies, but not on your pseudo-allies. But so, oh yeah, they pushed the sanctions, they pushed that price cap at $60 a barrel. So really, you're seeing these contradictions out of the White House. Your thoughts on that, and the fact that this is another push to go back, not to beat a dead horse, on de-dollarization, which blows up in the face of the Europeans, of the states, of the U.S., and even their Mideast allies in the Emiratis and the Saudis. They're all trading in the dollar for the time being.
Well, we are seeing a huge change in the global economic and political, if you like, situation. And the primary change is that America is going to be cut down to size. I mean, this is an inevitability, I think, and what you're seeing in terms of all the saber rattling, the financing of the war in Ukraine by America, the sanctioning of China, the sanctioning of Russia, the sanctioning of Iran. Anybody who doesn't follow the American, if you like, edict, the Americans are having a tantrum and trying to boycott them with sanctions, but those sanctions don't work. This is the problem. And Iran, for example, is the classic case where they haven't worked. All that they've achieved really is to make Iran, for instance, more self-sufficient. And I think this is the direction that Pakistan really needs to be brave and go down that direction to say, look, we've got a majority trade with China. China virtually sells everything in Pakistan. So the Americans aren't really doing trade on that level. It seems as though the Americans were quite keen on getting opium and drugs out of Afghanistan via Pakistan. It seems that they're interested in the military hardware sales, and there almost seems to have been this kind of scenario where the Americans had a hold on the military, if you like, strategy, but the Chinese actually already were dominating the economy in Pakistan. The Russians' trade was only 490, I think basically the exports of Pakistan to Russia, they amounted to about 323 million in 2021. It's not much more now. The same in terms of Russian exports to Pakistan, they were $498 million in 2021. So not huge figures. There's huge scope for financial trade to increase there between Russia and Pakistan. And if they were to do it without the dollar, if the Russians were confident enough to deal with currencies other than the American one, certainly the Chinese currency seems to be the attractive one, the middle option. And if that's the direction that Pakistan does go, of course, I think I agree that it bodes well for all the other nations. But to be honest with you, Pakistan is a very complicated case. America has a lot of terrorists, a lot of deep state operatives that are riddled throughout the Pakistani system, officially, unofficially. And one of the threats that America can carry with Pakistan, for instance, if they don't play ball and don't continue with the dollar, is they could increase the terrorism. And this is what a standard tactic they do. They could also get the World Bank not to give let up on the loans, to continue charging the interest. As it stands, Pakistan would never be able to pay off the interest. They're just basically barely surviving on that. And the World Bank it was refusing to give more money unless more cuts are made. To be honest with you, that would destabilize the Pakistan government, and it would cause further chaos. So moving away from America isn't going to be easy either way.
Thank you, Said. We only have about a little over a minute left. John, I want to give this last question out to you. It seems like we got the winners here. You have Beijing, because their currency is being used in this transaction. That's obviously going to add value to it. We have Moscow that's selling its crude while under sanctions. We have Pakistan that's getting discounted Russian crude, and Shehbaz Sharif said it's a transformative deal if it continues and we can get this crude and have this deal set up where we're getting it on a weekly basis. We're going to get our crude at a third of the market price that we're currently paying. Seems like everybody's a winner here except for who? The U.S. and their European allies.
Except for the U.S. and the U.S. agents inside Pakistan. And, this is, as you mentioned, it's that if the United States can't win by playing fair, then they play dirty, and we may see some political upheavals in Pakistan. But more important than all of this is that Pakistan's example will serve as an example to other countries around the world. And that's where it gets out of the control of the American military-industrial complex, and that's where we see historic.
Gentlemen, thank you both. We're out of time. I want to thank you both for joining us on the program. Stay safe to both of you. Mr. Said Mohsen Abbas joining us from Islamabad, and Mr. John Bosnich joining us from Belgrade. And viewers, thanks for joining us. This brings us to the conclusion of this segment of your Press TV News Review program. Thanks, and bye-bye for now.